We're live. Welcome everyone to our latest QuaranCon Cubed. I am here tonight with Antoine Bandele.
Oh my God, I just got it. QuaranCon is because it's quarantine convention, right?
Yes, and then the cubed thing is the QuaranCon continuing content, which is
Oh my God. What I think it was like some sort of like Klingon or like just sort of like fantasy reference. I just because you said it, and that's so funny because we were talking about like reading some stuff before we did the stream and hearing it out loud. Because hearing it out loud, you saying that, I'm like, oh, that's what it's supposed to be. Same with Shakespeare, right? Shakespeare's very similar. Like until it's performed for you, you don't really understand it when it's written, but when it's performed.
Yep.
It's
no,
fun.
and it's
Language is
totally
cool.
like I do
Language
that all
is
the time
awesome.
with fantasy words. It's like and real words too. Just like the number of words that I've been having a conversation with someone I know, and I say something that I've read a bajillion times, and I know what it means, and and then they look at me like that's actually pronounced whatever, and I'm like,
yeah.
Are you sure? Because I've been saying it like this in my head for years. Surely this is right.
And that is the truth in my head. That's the truth in my head.
Yeah. And then I have to go look it up. I don't trust people. I'm like, well, maybe you have the pronunciation in your head wrong. And sometimes that's true. Sometimes I was right, but often I am wrong. It's just the way, But whatever. It's all good. I don't mind. Okay. Now we've got the 20-second delay. Oh, no. Yeah. Mute. Mute is the button. I'm like, there we go. Sorry about that. I was trying to be ready for that and I wasn't fast enough.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm now muted. I don't have a weird 20-second lag audio. So everyone, we're here with Antoine Bandele, and we're going to talk about his latest book, which is Of Ruin and Silk, and also the Eswan series. And that book launches tomorrow, so that's very exciting. There's a link in the description. Please check
it out. Oh my God, it is tomorrow. I didn't even think about that. It's totally tomorrow. Wow.
I thought it was today at first, and then I clicked on, I was sending out things, and posting links and stuff, and so I actually clicked on it. I was like, oh, it launches tomorrow. Okay, I'll make sure that take a note of that. So we're going to talk about that. We're also going to talk about all kinds of other stuff. You know how if you're a returning audience member, you know how we do for QuaranCon. We do really random facts about people and talk about them.
Sweet.
So usually I dig through people's social media and stuff. I spent a few minutes digging around your YouTube, and that was enough for me to be like, you know what, we could just talk about Avatar all night. So probably I don't even have to go farther than that. Anyway, we will dig into all of that. But thank you so much for joining us, Antoine. It's lovely to have you here. And
it's also lovely the way you say my first name, because you say it like the proper French way, because like in America we typically have the harsher and like Antoine, but like Antoine, like whenever I hear a French person say my name, I'm like, oh my God, my name is so beautiful.
If you prefer it to be Antoine, I can do that too.
I love it whenever I'm called Antoine. It's like, oh my God, I feel awesome.
I can pretend that it's because I live in the French quarter of my city in Winnipeg in Canada, but it's more likely because I'm just setting myself up to say Bandele afterwards.
Right.
My brain is just like, it's got to be Antoine if it's Bandele. And my brain is funny that way. The strange place of my brain aside, let's dig into some of the questions that I have sent to you and that are prepared. And I'm going to apologize right now. I am so tired.
Oh, that's okay. Then we're all tired.
I got about 3 hours of sleep last night, and I think we're gonna be okay, but I apologize if I'm super spacey at any moment. Okay, so to start with, you have what I, as a very like teeny tiny like micro crumb speck on YouTube, would consider a really big audience on YouTube. I know that I'm sure that there's a whole other strata of what people consider big once you get into the big leagues on YouTube, and I don't know what that is, so forgive me if I'm gonna say you're a big deal on YouTube and you're gonna be like, no, I don't even have like 1 million subscribers or something. I have no idea how that works.
It's funny you mentioned that, because I'm reading a book right now called The Social Leap, in which he talks about how when we earn more money, we always make a new goalpost for ourselves, so that's hard for humans to be like actually happy. And it's funny you mentioned that, because back in the day I'd be like, oh, I'm at 100, I'm so good. Then you start looking ahead and you're like, oh, but then there's this other person who has 300. Oh, there's this other person who has 1 million. Oh, PewDiePie has 10 million subscribers. You're like, oh my God.
Yeah, and I have never really done it with YouTube, because YouTube is not my primary media, but I do it with authors all the time. looking at rankings, the number of books people have published, you know, and that kind of thing, and think like, you know, in terms of earnings for myself, just like not counting anyone else's stuff, but like I want to make, like, now I'm making this amount, now I want to make this amount from royalties. And then when it comes to YouTube, it's just like QuaranCon, we're like tiny, 180 some odd subscribers, and we're well aware of that makes us you know, not a thing on YouTube technically. But I legit don't know how big of a deal 240,000 some odd subscribers is. It seems like a really big deal to me, but I am like,
it's for me personally.
Okay, sweet. Yeah. I mean, like, it seems awesome. You know, I want to be like, yeah, but I don't know if you're going to be like, oh, no, it's really not a big deal.
No, it's cool because I like the audience that I have there, because there's some people who would say like, oh, I wish I'm going for like 1 million or whatever, but really I'm more about having a close knit community of people who I know that frequent there and who I have interactions with, versus having like a bunch of people who I don't really know. You know, like I prefer keeping it like how I am. I actually like the size of it right now, like versus it being like much bigger. Now, of course, you want that, but then you also want to make, you know, revenue so that you have like all the views. You know what I mean? You kind of want both of those worlds, you know, of being small but still being
balance
sustainable.
Between, are you on Patreon at all? Do you have?
I am. My Patreon is specifically for my writing, so it's not like for YouTube. I have YouTube memberships for YouTubers.
Cool. I did not even know that memberships on YouTube were a thing.
Very recent. I think it's 2 years old. They are, and they were trying to compete directly with Patreon.
Interesting. Okay, that makes sense. I like the couple YouTubers that I actually, you know, subscribe to and follow. Well, I was going to say regularly, but even that is, I don't do anything regularly anymore. I'm like, I barely have time to brush my teeth. I just feel like I don't know what's happening with my life, but I don't do anything all that regularly. But the few people that I do somewhat follow have Patreon also. Like that's the way they've been supporting themselves with it.
Yeah, Blind Wave or my buddies, their reaction channel, and they are, I think, top 10 on Patreon right now. Like they are, they live off Patreon more so than, you know, on their own YouTube ad revenue.
There you go. Cool. So YouTube, it's a thing. It's been a thing for a long time. Like I'm old enough to remember when it started.
Its inception. Yeah. I had my account when it started in 2006. I had my account.
And I was super late to actually do anything on YouTube. It existed long before I ever tried to like put anything up. But I'm curious, like, how did you get into it? Like you said, you were there right when it started. What did you start off doing? Did you ever envision this, like having 240,000 subscribers?
Like at the beginning, it was like because I did it for film purposes, right? Because when I got out of high school and college, I was doing film programs. And so really it was a cheap way to put your stuff online without having to pay for bandwidth. Because back in the day, you had to actually like, you know, pay for your bandwidth and like compress your files really small so that you don't have to spend all this to your, you know, internet service provider or your whoever, if you had GoDaddy, whoever it was at the time. So yeah, it was just a place to be like, oh yeah, put it there because, you know, they it's free, you know, kind of a thing. And it was a place to log like your short films. And at the time for me, it was mostly for my short films, music videos that I used to do. A lot of people now are starting to notice that like I actually did music videos for, I don't know if you are familiar with this gentleman, but Tyler, the Creator, Odd Future, somewhat familiar. Like I did music videos that had him in it.
Okay, cool.
And Casey Veggie, stuff like that. But then I didn't get serious in like the idea of like making money from YouTube until around 2014 when it was announced that Disney would buy out Star Wars. So I was getting back into Star Wars, which I already had been. I had made like some lightsaber fights that were like on YouTube and stuff like that. You saw those? Yeah, okay.
I didn't actually watch them. I like watched the previews of them and it's like, oh, that's hilarious. But I was poking around in different places.
Yeah, so I was doing that kind of stuff, you know, like in this vein of short films, sketches, stuff like that. But at that time, lore videos were kind of like a thing, and I saw there was like versus videos where people would do like Yoda versus Darth Vader and that kind of thing.
Darth Vader
like,
versus Darth Vader.
Yeah, that was actually when I thought I was kind of pretty clever because I was like, oh yeah, Vader versus Vader. And they're like what? I'm like, yeah, because Anakin wasn't Anakin at that point; he was Darth Vader at that point, right? So I was doing stuff like that, and that's where I got a lot of traction. And I think mostly because people were excited for Star Wars at that time too, as it coming back. And that was probably the best time for me was like before it came out versus like when it did come out, because my interest started waning after that point.
Right.
But as I was doing that, I was like, oh wait, why don't people do versus for other series? And I was like, oh, I like Avatar, let me do Avatar. Oh, what about Harry Potter? I'll do Harry Potter, Mass Effect. So I started doing that, and it started going out to more like lore videos as well as verses and stuff like that. And that's where like actual revenue was coming in. And I was like, oh, this is what YouTubers talk about when they say they can make money off of YouTube. So yeah, as I continued doing that, I even was able to last year to collaborate with the official Nickelodeon channel on Avatar: The Last Airbender. They had me come out to talk about the Avatar life lessons, like the things you learn from the TV series. I was like, whoa, that's really cool. And then like I've had EA Star Wars fly me out to Switzerland, like which was like weird. No, sorry, not Switzerland, Sweden. I always get them mixed up. Sweden, because that's where they're stationed for their Battlefront team. And I was like, I can play games for like a whole day, and y'all want to like send me out there? Sure. So I was like, okay, that's really cool. And yeah, that's just how it's been going for like the past 7 years, because I left my job at Apple Retail in 2015. So yeah, 5-6 years.
Wow, that's so cool. That's just that's like yeah, it's just such a neat thing to monetize. I think it's cool. I like the idea of people making money off of that kind of content and entertaining people. And anyway, obviously
for just being a nerd.
Yeah, exactly. That's brilliant. Like, congrats to everyone who can get paid for just being a nerd. I feel like successful authors basically get paid the same thing, right? Like, we spend so much time like diving down research rabbit holes and stuff, or or just geeking out on other people's work, and it's just like, get paid for being a nerd. Yeah. Daniel
Green, are you familiar with him?
I am. Yeah, I am.
He barely started like 2 years ago or something like that, and he's like shooting up right now. Murphy Napier, her too. Like, you can be a nerd and make money. It's awesome.
I was watching some videos with both of them in it last night, actually, because I was watching Murphy's videos because a friend of mine was like, "Oh, Murphy reviewed my book and she loved it, and like, you guys have to check it out."
She's awesome. I love her.
She's very cool. I had not watched, like, I don't do much booktuber stuff just because it's like a little too close to professional home. Like, I kind of just like don't really want to see that many people's book reviews. Actually, I'm happy to do it once I've already read the book, and then I enjoy like
interacting and talking. Yeah.
But if I haven't read the book yet, I stay away from reviews.
I'm generally the same way, actually. Unless it's like something I'm on the fence of, then I'll look at a review. But if it's something that I already know that I intend on reading or watching or whatever it may be, I'm the same. I don't really look at reviews.
Yeah, I just sort of I like to form my own opinion first, and then I love to compare
then you go
people's. But yeah, I just like. So anyway, so I hadn't been following either. I've heard of Daniel Green. I had not really watched a ton of his videos until he reviewed a few Spiffbo contestants, and then that are friends of mine, and then I was like, I don't know.
And it's funny too. He's actually about to release his novella right now.
I know. I saw mainly because Evan Winters keeps tweeting about the upcoming release for him, which is really sweet. Apparently they're buddies, so that's cool. So anyway, I saw a Daniel Green and Murphy crossover video just last night, and thought that was hilarious. They were doing a game where one of them read 1-star reviews to the other, and the other
I did see the thumbnail for that. Yeah. And trying to guess what the book or what was being reviewed.
Yeah. That was kind of fun. So how did we get there? Anyway, so YouTube monetizing nerdiness, like it's a great way to be. So let's talk about then how we were just sort of saying, like, you get paid to be a nerd, which is kind of also what you get to do as an indie author. How did YouTube prepare you for indie publication? Like, what are some ways that sort of set you up for that?
Probably the idea of entrepreneurship and like doing it yourself, because the cool thing about indie publishing is that the gatekeeper isn't some arbitrary publisher or a bunch of people who say yay or nay to your story. It's the readers themselves, and I think that's the better way of doing it, because the readers are who you're trying to write to, not to someone who's behind a desk just looking at numbers. So that idea of coming from YouTube, because even from me going from retail to going to YouTube, I was used to just going to a place, turning my mind off when I go home, and not thinking about it. When you're an entrepreneur, you have to like think about it all the time. Yeah. So moving over from like that mentality of just being like, oh, I go to work and I do my thing as I'm there, but once I clock out, I'm not thinking about that at all until the next day.
Yeah.
Moving over to YouTube and then thinking about like, video ideas or what's happening or what's working, what's not. That switching over to indie publishing, I think, was very easy because of that's the same mentality you have to have as an indie author as well.
Is finding viewers for YouTube a similar exercise to finding readers, do you think, or are they too different to compare?
I feel like, at least as an indie, it is, because YouTube, or at least as it was before it became pay to play as it is now in like today's landscape. Because I think still on YouTube, because really, I don't know that many YouTubers that actually do any paid advertising to get people to get eyeballs. Is still very much on the algorithm on YouTube and suggested videos and things like that. Like, you can still generate, viewership as long as you have related videos, so someone else's video that that pops up. Versus now in indie, like before, like in the early Amazon days, it was much easier to just like put your book out and then make sure you have the right keywords, and then you would be noticed. Now it's like, oh no, you need money to actually have people see what you're doing. So I would say that early indie is like way more similar in that regard than it is now. I think YouTube still is much easier to break in than it is for indies these days, at least monetarily.
Yeah, that makes sense. I had I've never tried to gain subscribers for YouTube, so like the people we have for QuaranCon are just like people who showed up from Twitter after I sent out like hey guys, what if I really quick in a couple weeks just turn around and make a convention happen back in March of last year, and everybody was like, yeah, what a great idea, and yay, that's like who we've got. That's our audience. So I've never actually tried to make YouTube work for me, so I'm not familiar with that process at all. But it does sound like that would be very similar to the original indie pub before you really had to invest in advertising.
And still the idea of writing to market, like same with YouTube, it'd be like producing a video to market. What is actually like videos that I was doing 5 years ago aren't necessarily like even early YouTube was more about sketches, right? And that sort of thing. Sketches don't really work that well on YouTube anymore. Right. Reactions are kind of like the big thing now, or how-tos are still pretty big. It's always these different trends that YouTube goes through, and very similar to indie marketing. What is the market at this time? Like, what are readers hungry for?
Yeah. Do you find, I know with Indie Pub, it's a bit about trying to sort of figure out who your ideal readers are and what other books they're reading, and thus like which books you need to sort of try to tie your book with, whether that's through paying for Amazon ads or paying for other ads, or simply trying to get your keywords in line with those books, or doing newsletter swaps with those authors, whatever it is. Is that similar? Is it a similar process for?
Yeah, for sure. Like instead of keywords, you're dealing with tags on YouTube. Again, the type of video you're doing, you want to make sure that it's like in line with other videos, even if it's not exactly the same. Of course, you want to put your own spin on it because you want to have your unique voice. But you have to kind of know, you have to have your ear to the ground of like what's going on in the YouTube, sphere to be successful.
Yeah. Well, cool. So then it sounds like it would be an excellent training ground for
yeah, for sure. Like I think they can apply to each for sure.
Yeah. Okay, so we are going to talk about your actual books soon, but first we're going to veer wildly off to the side. Except it's not so veering off from your YouTube channel, because I think it does appear to be something you talk about a lot on YouTube. We're going to talk about a little bit of Avatar: The Last Airbender.
Oh, sweet.
Because I am an Avatar: The Last Airbender fan. I watched the series back when it first came out, and then I like binged it again while I was living in Japan.
Oh, whoa.
Streaming from somewhere. I can't but I was teaching a job that gave me plenty of time to do that kind of thing, and I remember just like watching the whole thing again, and then I watched it again when my daughter was really little. And like too little probably to be watching Avatar, but she was little. Like she was really sick one day, and like a flu, and she just was like wiped out. She was like lying across me, and I was like, "Well, let's watch a cartoon." And I was like, "But I want to watch a cartoon that I actually want to watch." And at the time, I knew nothing about what like child appropriate shows might be. So I was like, "We'll watch Avatar. That's not too bad." And like the first couple episodes are actually pretty little kid friendly. They're not too scary. So we watched that, but that
until the third one where you're like, Airbender genocide, but really I don't know if a child really gets that all the way.
Like,
why is he a skeleton? He was sleeping for a very long time.
Got very dusty. So, don't worry about it. I don't know why the person disintegrated or the ship exploded, or it's fine. So anyway, so that was like kicked off a third spree of me watching it. I think I wound up watching at least most of that. And then there's this weird thing where I like missed Korra happening the original time, like when it originally aired, like somehow in the way my life was. I don't know if it was while I was
well, I mean, that was semi by design. Like Nickelodeon wasn't the nicest to them, like on the production side of it. And one of them was that they would sometimes put things on the Nickelodeon like channel, and sometimes they would put it directly online. And then some episodes you weren't sure where it would end up. It was really towards the end there. It was pretty bad. Like it wasn't the best like marketing for it.
Interesting, because basically I missed it when it happened, but then I found out about it after the fact. Like I was talking about rewatching Avatar, and someone was like, "But have you watched Korra?" And I was like, "No."
What is Korra?
What is this? And so then I binge watched all of Korra and was like, "This is great." Yeah,
was it when it was on Netflix? Is that when you binged it?
Yeah,
when it came back. Yeah, that was huge for it. That's the reason why Avatar Studios is happening, because they're like,
awesome.
Oh, people are actually like, it was on the top ranks for several weeks. I think it like broke a record, like Airbender and Korra.
It's delightful. So like, and that brings me to the next question, which is, what are you most excited about after that announcement? Like what they're doing. I watched a bit of your video, so I kind of know, but maybe not everybody else does. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, just more stories in general. And just that I feel like they are going to eventually expand out to more than just Korra and Aang. Like, I mean, the catalyst is obviously going to be, one of those two, or Airbender, like to start off to get people, hey guys, like here's a little taste. And then it being able to become its own expanded universe, similar to the way Marvel and Star Wars have done it. And the reason why I'm more excited about this than those previous ones, Marvel, I've always been cool with, but it's been like I'll watch it one and done, and then I'll check out. Star Wars, I'm a little bit more intimate with, so I'm a little bit more hurt when they do things that are different from the original continuity that's now deemed Legends continuity. Right, but with Avatar, you're still having the creators as like the main heads, and everything's funneling through them, but they are going to be working with other people, similar to how they worked with FC Yi, who was the author of the Kyoshi novels, which was in my favorite Avatar anything in the past 6 years since Korra came out. And just seeing how that kind of relationship can work and how they're going to be working with all these other people in the future is really exciting stuff. And to see where they can take it, because they, like they were saying in their statement, there are so many eras. Like they specifically said different eras of Avatar that can be talked about. Like one of the things I'm most excited about if they do it is like learning about the second Avatar, like when like the first time really knowing what it means to be part of the cycle, or that there is a cycle at all, that sort of thing, because that was a very new concept at that time, and that it was a warring period back in those old Avatar days. So it's like you can do that. The Red Lotus origin story I would love to see as well, more on Kyoshi, because the novel is left off in a space where it's like, whoa, there's much more Kyoshi life, especially when she lives to be 230 years old. Yeah. So it's like, oh, she has so much more story left. We only saw her when she was 17, 18, like where's the other 200 years? So there's so much like that can be done. And I'm so excited to what they're going to come out with it.
Sweet. Yeah, that is pretty exciting. And I feel this sort of the same way, especially because I love those series, but I've never been particularly like grabby about anything creative when I'm a fan of it. I'm not like, it's got to be this way or you've ruined it, like I'm very much just excited to see what else, like just no, I want to see other, like give me more and whatever.
I've been like that with Avatar, surprisingly, but with Star Wars I think maybe because there was so much more time between the Star Wars
depending
movies.
On how formative it is too. I don't know.
Like, and that's true too. That's true, because with Avatar I don't have that same like some people will get a little bit perturbed with some of the stuff that happened in Korra, like for instance the past lives being destroyed. Right. I thought that was very impactful, because I'm like, oh, they actually talk about that as a consequence in the first series, and you actually see the consequence of it, and you see how dire that is. If you don't have those things happen, then then it feels like, oh, everything's gonna work out. I was like, I thought that was very bold of them doing that, but I'm not as attached to, I guess, that piece of lore. Like I didn't think it was so devastating that she lost her connections to the past lives. Like now she's making her own way. I thought that was very compelling, but I mean, it's different for every, I guess, franchise that you follow.
Yeah. I mean, like I actually did think that was devastating, but that didn't make me not like it. That was like, no, that's a serious consequence. And like y'all went there, and then and
especially when you can't really have. I mean, there are deaths in the series, but there aren't as many because it still is YA. For instance, like when Amon in the first season is just taking people's bending away, like when he took Lin Beifong's bending away, it was almost like a death. Like you felt like, oh my god, that character just died, but she didn't actually die. Just that her bending, her powers got taken away. So it's just stuff like that. I think works really well for like that genre.
Yeah, I agree. It's like those things are still really impactful and they're devastating. They're not necessarily as permanent as dying, and so it's just like I don't know. I thought it was cool personally. Okay, so then that leads me to my next question, and maybe you don't even have a particular preference, although you probably do. But if we're looking at Korra, Aang, or Kyoshi, who's your favorite, or which series, or not series, because Kyoshi hasn't really had her own thing yet, aside from the books, which are awesome. I actually haven't read them yet, but they're actually on my Kindle. Like, I've been waiting to read them for months.
So it has my favorite antagonist. Like literally, my favorite antagonist comes from that book. So if I was talking about just pure story, and the Kyoshi is like tops for me. Like I would love to see more Kyoshi stuff, especially the type of avatar she is. She is like a Batman avatar, like in the way that she deals with people. And the book gives more insight because I think the fan base has made her out to be like, no, you just kill the person if they don't like to bring them to justice. Like that's kind of like what everybody says, but she's actually very sweet. Like she doesn't want to do that as a first option. But if you push her there, she's okay with like being like, hey, you know what? You got to get hurt, sort of thing. So I would say Kyoshi first. I think the thing that is most possible would be seeing Aang and the rest of the gang as adults. I think that is where that story could go. But then for Korra herself, I think I would be least excited for that because I think her story is kind of already done. I mean, Aang's is already done as well, but there is that little in between of him, like what's Aang like as a father? What's Toph doing? What made her become a cop? What was Sokka doing that whole entire time? Because we don't really get much of him and Korra, which is fine because it's not their story anymore. But like just getting that, I think the most meat you'll get is from that adult version of the gang.
Right. Yeah, that seems reasonable. But also like the building of. Oh, what is the name of the new city? So this is the thing. I've only watched
Republic City.
Thank you, Republic City. And my memory is awful, period. But yeah, since I've only watched it once, I don't like remember anything.
I'm the same as well. Like I have to like be in something to like seem like I'm in the know. But if I like don't do anything for a year, then I'll completely forget. Like, how do you not remember that? You're like the guy who talks about. I'm like, I just don't. If I'm not like constantly surrounded by something, I'm gonna forget about it.
I just like it's not, my brain cannot hold on to those details anymore. I used to be like more of a steel trap. Like if I read a book and loved it, I just like all the details down.
I'll forget. Now it's more about feelings for me. Like I remember how something makes me feel, which is the famous Maya Angelou quote, like you won't remember what people necessarily say to you, but you remember how they make you felt. I'm so like, especially getting older and older, like I feel like that's more the case. Like I remember I don't like you for some reason. I don't know the reason specifically. Like people try to have you recall stuff like, why is it you're like that? I'm like, I actually don't know. I just know that's how I feel.
Yeah, there you go. And these things are sometimes hard to explain. It's all good. But okay, so that does sound like it would be really cool if they spent a lot of time with Kyoshi, and that seems like a reasonable thing to be rooting for. And then swerving way back, like away from Avatar, we're going to swerve back to actually talking about your books right here at the 30-minute mark. We're going to get on track with the actual author talk. So the Esawan series starts with By Sea and By Sky and continues with Of Ruin and Silk. And I have not finished reading By Sea and By Sky, so no spoilers. Also no spoilers because we want people to buy the whole series and skip it because we told them everything that happened. Right. But let's talk a little bit about it. Can we talk about where that series idea came from? I mean, super cool world. There are regular pirates and sky pirates. There are,
Well, yeah, that's the thing. It's like the transition. So this specifically, the first book is about the transition point between sea ships and airships. So what we're interacting with is the first sighting ever of an airship, period. So it's crazy. Like the first time that the main character sees the airship, or everybody, all the pirate crew thinks it's like, some great beast that's come back from like the past. Cause there's this, the idea, and the reason why airships are even being constructed is because the old flying mounts are dying off. So like there's only a few dragons left. There's only a few congamatos, which is a Central African sort of, they look like pterodactyls kind of.
Okay.
The rocks from Arabian myth, the big huge eagles. Sometimes I say rocks and people think I'm talking about like an actual throne rock, which is funny. There's actually a saying in the book, I think we actually might have switched this, me and my editor, where we said like, killing 2 rocks with 1 stone, and someone's like, did you mean like a, but no, ROC, not ROCK. But anyway, English language again. So yeah, this is the transition period between those 2 points. But the main catalyst of the story is it's about a woman who is trying to stave off her husband's disease. He has this thing called stone skin, and the only way, there's no way to cure it, but you can stop it off, which is kind of like an analogy to some of our real life ailments that we get, particularly like HIV, where you can take medications to stave off the full-blown AIDS kind of a thing. So it's like that. Though it's not an STI or STD, it's just a magical.
There's also some forms of cancer that you can only keep.
Stave off, like, or put in remission, but not actually get rid of. Yeah, so thing like that. So cancer, that's a little better. You can keep it in remission, but you can't actually get rid of it. But it means that it's very expensive for her to do, so she has to go to piracy. Right. So as this is happening, as she's like just trying to do this very normal thing, or not normal thing really, who tries to become a pirate? But as she's dealing with normal piracy, she's like, airships exist, and like the idea of like the conflicting, because there are actually 2 MCs, one that is the sky captain or a wannabe sky captain, and the pirates, and how they clash, and also her dealing with her husband and all that.
Gotcha. Well, that's super cool. What inspired that? What made you think, yes, what I really want to do is write about pirates and air pirates and how those 2 things meet? I mean, it's an awesome idea. I don't know why you wouldn't want to write about it.
I don't know. I don't know how it happened because I wrote the Kishi first, which is the from Tales from Esteban, which is like the first series that I like try to do, which is going to be about like African myths. That one in particular was one that came from Angola, where you had like handsome dudes in the front, hyenas in the back of their heads. So very vampiric in that sense, where they like lure you and then eat you afterwards. So in that story, the main character is formerly a pirate, like pirate turned monk. And I was like, I wonder what happened back on his side of the continent, where he used to be, like who he used to run with. And I was like, pirates. It would be cool if I did a story about pirates. I was like, okay, so why would someone go to piracy? And I was like, I think I went through like some scenarios of like, what if there was like a disease that someone's trying to stay off? And that's where I think about like the stone skin stuff. And then I started building out the okay, what's like the most crazy thing that they could like interact with? And I knew that I had the idea for this empire that is trying to, they're very similar to the Arabian nations that were conquering all the way to Spain, like when they took over Spain and then the Inquisition shut them out. And I was like, what if they try to go back? And what would they have done to try and get back there? And I was like, they might like try to think about new technology. And I was like, airships are pretty like cool. That's a fantasy trope. I was like, they could try to build airships so they can get back to like the Spain. So like, go back and take back what they thought was theirs. Right. And then have that interaction with the pirates, like them really just doing a test for their airship, and the pirate, her having this issue with the pirates, and then clashing of 2 worlds. What happens in that situation?
That's awesome. I find that's like how most of the ideas that I find that are worth writing happen. Is it like I have one idea and it's sitting there doing its thing, and I have this other idea and it's sitting there doing its thing, and it's not until I come up with a third idea that makes those 2 ideas collide that is actually like, no, now I have to write the book. Before that, it was just like random notes, and then suddenly that other thing happens, and you're like, okay, now this is enough to actually work with. So that sounds like a great way to stumble into that, and also so cool, pirates and airships both. Always fun. My current work in progress is the first time I've let myself write a pirate-y story. It's like smugglers and then like a secret navy that they're kind of the bad guys ish, but anyway, so they think they're the good guys, of course, but and that's as like close as I've gotten, but I did it in this world that I've been writing in for a while with it, which is like largely like samurai with magic.
That's really cool. Actually, that's funny you say samurai with magic, because I actually have another story that I want to do that's like based on Yasuke, who was a samurai who was in Japan. but I don't know what's gonna happen because I'm at this point where I'm having too many ideas and I need to like start focusing. And like I just actually made a decision, I think yesterday or 2 days ago, like, hey, we need to focus on like completing one series before we like think about 4 other ones that we want to do and like collaborating with all these other authors. Like let's finish one first.
It's so hard. I took I wrote the first 2 books of my Gensogai series, and then I took 2-3 years off to write a completely different series that was just a fast-paced urban fantasy humor series, and now I'm back to writing that original series again, but just like, at least the other one's done, so I actually like finished it, and now I'm back. But
that's the important part, is to finish before you jump ship to something else.
And I left it like all of these books are standalones, so it's okay.
Oh, that's so much. Yeah, standalones are much easier. Oh my
if
goodness.
If you're writing even sequential standalones, as long as there's like a really satisfying ending, I feel like you can leave it for a little while and come back.
Which is what I did with the Kishi. The Kishi was a standalone, and that's what I was supposed to be doing. I was supposed to just be standalone, and then the Sky Pirate one, what I'm doing now, was actually supposed to be 2 of Tales from Esselwan, but I got really big because I had like one MC, and I was like, oh, it'll be a duology where I'll see it from her perspective and his perspective. I was like, oh no, let's put them together. And I was like, oh my god, this is 200,000 words. I can't make this long. So I like rewrote book 1 to be book 1, and like now it's its whole like trilogy thing going on, and it's separate from Tales from Esselwan with the Kishi. Like it blew up into its own thing.
Suddenly you have a world that you're writing in with.
I know. I'm like, no.
That's legit. That's what's happening. Yeah, I hear you. That's like the 3rd book is totally different characters from the first 2 books. So those are really sort of a duology now, and this is really its own thing. It's really hard to list stuff that way on Amazon. And
yeah, it's really hard.
And so I'm still listing it as book 3, but I'm going to be very clear across the top. Like, you don't have to have read any of the other books to read.
Right. So, yeah.
Anyway. Yeah. But like, yeah. So you're just like, how do I do this? Or do I could list them all as not being sequential, which you can.
They now have that now. I think they have that in the series breakdown now. They now have that as an option. Say, hey, you don't have to read this in any particular, or you could say like a suggested reading order. Like that's cool too.
And so I'm going to mess with that as I get closer to actually releasing the next book. But it's the same. Like, I'm like, oh, well, okay, here goes the world. And also this book is taking us, we were just in this one nation to start with. And now we're like, we've zoomed, like the end of this book, zooming way out on the map. And suddenly there's a lot of other stuff going on.
That's what I'm doing too. So I don't actually have a full world map yet. I have like the little section I made in the Kishi, and then I have like the pirate islands over here. And I already know of a story that I want to do that's going to be like in the north. And eventually I'll figure out how they all connect in like a big world map. Because right now these are all like lead up stories. Like they're not like the full epic fantasy that I intend to do. Like, small.
You're just like, this is the settlers and civilization, like slowly
yes, exactly,
and revealing the map underneath.
That's exactly what it is. There's a lot of fog on my map right now.
Tiny little pockets, and that's sort of like where I was, and now I'm like, oh god, now I need the whole map. So I've literally been actually making a whole map. That's part of this editing process. But anyway, but it's fun. Like that is, I feel like this is why you get paid to be a nerd as an author, because you're like, I created a whole world. Now I'm making a map. Now I'm making this history book to go with my people. And like, anyway. So now, if you can talk about it without spoiling it, can we tell us a little bit about where Of Ruin and Silk takes us from By Sea and Sky? Yeah.
So it delves deeper into the characters and who they are, because the first one is very action packed and it's very just like fast moving. Which is funny because Murphy Napier actually read it, and she said like, this is way faster paced than I thought it would be, and that it's supposed to be the action adventure, like, oh snap, airship battles, kind of thing. Like, second one is definitely exactly. Second one definitely has action. There's like, flying creatures that are in it. There's sword fights. There's infiltrations of fortresses and things like that. But it's definitely more about the interpersonal relationships. Like it's definitely that middle part of just like, hey, let's like, figure these people out a little bit more as they like start, building up all this and revealing true character too, because they get put into conflicts that reveals like what they truly are, or when they get hit to their limit, like what happens, particularly for the male MC that's in it. So I'm really that's the reason why I like this one a lot, is that it's a heady one for the characters versus being like action first. I would say it's more of a balance between the action and like getting into people's heads.
Cool. That sounds interesting. Do we go anywhere? How do we see anything that we didn't see location-wise?
Yes, we do. So while we were mostly at sea in the first book, or sea and sky, by sea and sky, but Ruin and Silk takes place mostly in the city of Alanim, which is the capital of the empire that heads up the airship, or airships, I should say. And it's more about interacting with that cityscape. And of Ruin and Silk refers to the city itself, and that they are building up like this new prosperous new version of their empire, but they're kind of leaving the old on the wayside, and not really and exploiting some of the old a little bit. So there's that kind of like dichotomy that's being played between the two.
Gotcha. Interesting. That sounds like it'll be thematically
resonant.
Yes, but also I'm like deep, like there should be a lot to use. There should
like I try to make that happen with my titles.
Rich. That's
rich. Yes. Yeah, because I try to make my titles link into the team. So like by sea and sky, like that's obviously in reference to sea ships and then airships, like the transition between that. And then Ruin Silk is supposed to be about the city itself. The third book, For Code and Honor, is about like the difference between like the code of pirates and the honor of like the Vaji military and all that. Sorry, I said Vaji military, like you guys know what Vaji means. The empires.
Just pretend. We all know. Of course. Yes.
Vaji, what is that? He's making up words over here.
I actually have read it far enough into By Sea and Sky that I actually had already seen that explained. So I totally did know what you were talking about, or at least like I knew this much about what you were talking about.
Right.
Because Zala has already explained briefly on the page about how it's weird that the Vaji are sending out all these.
Yeah, because they weren't known for that. They were just known as like poets and like, oh yeah, we just like, learning stuff. And now they're becoming conquerors.
Suspicious. I mean, or like I don't know how suspicious it is. It's just like, hey, stop trying to conquer people. But but presumably they've got a reason, not probably a good one. I don't know. Is there ever a good reason?
Is there a good reason? Is there ever really a good reason?
Some people convince themselves that there are.
Yes, they do.
Unity and peace.
Which is very funny that you say that, because yes, one of the characters has an epiphany that sends them on the wrong path. Within book 2. Where it's one of those things of like a rationalization, like, you know what? Yeah, this, they do need to be subjugated, kind of a situation.
These people can't rule themselves. We must.
Yeah.
I mean, not the first person to go down that road, right? Yeah. Well, there you go. So, I mean, this is what stories are made of. People. If people don't make mistakes, what do we even write about?
Right. Exactly.
Okay. So from your website and your YouTube channel and social media, it looks like, to the outside observer, and I think we briefly touched on this earlier, you said something to dealing with this, but that you have like tons of projects on the go at once. And at any moment, does that ever get overwhelming, or do you just like thrive on having like 10 different things going on, and that's just how things work out for you?
Probably both, because I thrive on it, but then also it can there's a tipping point to anything, right? And I think I found what my tipping point was, because I was doing like a lot at the same time. So now I'm like, okay, I'll only write one adult series and one YA series, not like 3 adult series, YA series, and then like the shorts for the YA. Like I gotta like just be like 1 and 1, and then that's it for the writing part of it. Right. And I also have like audiobooks that I do too, because I produce all my own audiobooks because I have the equipment and I have the editing skill and kind of stuff. And I do it for other indie authors as well. So like anybody who needs like an audiobook, I do that for them.
Yeah.
And then I also do vlog editing for other YouTube channels, and my own YouTube channel. So
I was gonna say, like, there's like your own YouTube channel. Like I was looking, like you post very consistently to YouTube, and yet you're still finding time to write books at all, let alone lots of them. Like I think that was the thing that I was like, oh my gosh, because I saw, you have this book coming out tomorrow, and then I was looking at your back catalog, and I was like, that's bigger than the last time I looked at this page. Like, I think the last time I looked at your website, it was basically just like By Sea and Sky, and then
now you see TJ Young in the Orisha.
And I was like those two are there, and now there's like now this YA book, and there's some like short stories up there, and then
which is insane, because that YA I think is going to do very well, because I'm already sending it out to like advanced readers, and it's really hitting really well, and it's the first time I've written contemporary, and I think I found like where I'm really, really supposed to be. Like I'm still going to be doing the S1 stuff, but I found that like contemporary just clicks with me. I don't know why it clicks with me. So, and then also clicking with the readers that I've been sharing out to. So like So yeah, there'll be other ones that I'll be doing even more projects but yeah, that YA in particular is like really, really, really special.
That's awesome. That's so great. I mean, that's always a delightful reaction anyway, right? Like you get positive feedback from early advanced readers and yeah, that's always delightful. And I'm so glad like it feels like it's extra special if it feels like you like hit that moment where
because it's so
like,
close to my voice. I feel like, because I don't have to edit myself being like, oh, this sounds too modern, or I don't know, this would have happened at this time period. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, oh no, I can totally talk
in my completely fictional world. Yeah.
Right. And then exactly. It's still, while it's fictional, it's still like, held to like the time period, kind of
People
thing.
get weird about it. Readers.
But in chapter 1, I could talk about Steph Curry and LeBron James, or I can talk, someone flips open their iPhone, or talk about IG, I can talk about modern stuff, or just the way that they talk, like, some of just the verbiage or just the way that people interact with each other. It's like a lot easier for me to like, I guess, get my head onto the page versus having to like edit myself like I do for like the more archaic stuff.
Yeah, I know that totally. I mean, it makes sense to me. One of the reasons.
Did you feel like that with your urban fantasy that you did?
Yeah, I did. I like, and that character, the main character, Victoria Marmot in that series. I mean, part of that is a joke. Like I gave her my initials on purpose because the whole point is it's supposed to be self-insert fluff fantasy, right? Like the idea that is, like it's those tropes that I'm trying to pull on and twist. And so I very intentionally gave her my initials, and I also gave her a lot of my voice. Like she sounds more like me than any other character I've ever written. But also like, the other characters that I've written mostly are people in fantasy realms, right? So it makes sense that you sound that much like me. But that was very freeing in a lot of ways.
Ditto.
And I really enjoyed that. I don't know. I think if I were going to go back to that universe, I would probably do it with an adult character. And I love writing YA, and I had so much fun writing someone who I like made to sound like me in high school. But the problem was I made her sound like me in high school, but she was supposed to be in high school in like 2017. So
that specific time period.
Yeah, I mean, and I taught high school right up until a couple years before I started writing that book. So so I was, like, I don't think her mode of speech was that far off, but I was like, no, this would have been like. I
do that a lot. I can't tell you how many times I've texted my brother and sister who are younger than me. Well, half brother and half sister who are younger than me. Sister's 20, brother's 15. So I'll go back and like, do you guys still say this? Like, do you still say, oh, that girl's fly? And they're like, nah, not really. Like you can say she's fine or like she's lit or whatever it is, whatever. Yeah. But like, I had to do that a lot. Like, like going back, like, is this still a thing or not? Because I'm 30 now and I don't know what you guys say anymore.
I hate the moments where I realized that I was getting that stuff wrong. It made me feel so old.
Yep.
So I was just like, and also, but like I saved myself by making her as nerdy as I am. Which
kind of helps because if you're nerdy, you don't know what the in thing is. Exactly. Yep.
And you talk like your parents, and so I legit, and I made her parents were my age.
My MC is the same way, actually. He's kind of like on the nerdy side too, right? So he gets away with, or even people, the other kids will call him out and be like, "Who talks like that?" I'm like, "Oh, whoops." It works.
Yeah, so I made her really nerdy, and then I mostly like threw her into alternate reality realms. So it was all about being magical, and it wasn't really about being on Earth. And so, but I loved it. It was really fun, and it was a nice break. Like it was just
right.
I love the series that I'm working on now, and I'm actually excited to write.
That's the reason why when you said that it works so well. Is that like I think I need to have multiple going on because it one project motivates the other. Like if I feel down about one project, I can do the other one, and that helps the problem I had with the previous project. So having multiple things going on helps because it influences and like kind of converges together and helps everything uplift. Versus, but there, like I said, there's a tipping point where if you do it too much of that, then like nothing gets done. So.
I totally hear that. I used to consistently actually work 2 projects at once, which was the max I could ever do realistically. That's
my max now too. I'm now come to understand that too.
I mean, I would laugh if this is legit just a time thing. Like I'm 38. I want to talk to you in 8 years and see if you're like, and now I can only do 1 project at a time.
Well, here's how I think about it, right? So while one thing's being beta read or it's out with like, critique partner or something like that, that's when I pick up the other one. So I'm never actually doing 2 at once necessarily, but more that I'm just like, because you are supposed to, as a writer, step away from your writing. So after you finish a draft, you know, people say like, oh, put it in a drawer or whatever. Well, I don't have a drawer. I put it on Google Docs or whatever. And then I'll do the other project until that one gets to its next point, whatever that might be, whether it's like, you know, editing or beta reading, whatever it is. And then I'll hop over to the next one. But before I was doing like a bunch of things in between. It was just bad.
And that's the thing. So like, I still do the alternating, like, yes, when this book goes off to my editor, I will go back to writing the next book a bit, etc. But I used to just like, I used to even be able to just like, if I was having a bad day with project A, I'd just work on project B, you know, and I'd sort of like simultaneously work on them. Then one would get closer to being done, and then I'd focus on that one until it was all the way finished. Then I go back to the other one. Anyway.
Right.
But like, I can't even do that anymore. And now basically the balancing point is like, actual human interaction and writing. Like, those are the only two things I can juggle.
Exactly.
So I don't know. But yeah, I would love to talk to you in 8 years.
Yes.
It's just like,
I just do one thing and that's it. That's the only thing I do.
It would just be so funny. But I'm sure I doubt it's actually a thing about age. But okay. So we've talked about that. Oh, we're cruising right on through these. What are some of the challenges of, so we talked before a little bit about how like being a YouTuber like prepped you for Indie Pub. But as from the specific angle of like things that are hard about it, right? Like what are some of the challenges about making, and not just YouTube specifically, but videos in general, films in general, or even movies, whatever you've worked on film-wise in terms of like a visual form of entertainment, and then comparing those challenges to writing books. Like what's hard about one that's like also hard in the other, or different, and like talk to me about challenges. What's hard and why?
Figuring out what people actually want to read. or what they want to watch, you know, because like one year you'll have like this video format that works really well for like 6 months, and you're like, oh man, like I'll just keep doing this, and then all of a sudden that trend's gone, and you're like, but you guys loved this 6 months ago. What happened? You know, like, and that's for both the indie, the video content creation or like writing books, because these trends, and also things will suddenly come back into style. Like you'll see like an older video or older book that's just like, what's happening right now? And it's like the idea, I think, there's a famous author who says, vampires come back in style like every 10, 15 years sort of a thing. So like, hey, if you have a vampire book, it's not working right now, wait for like another few years and make sure that your backlist is like ready for it. Like, you know, when it comes back in the trend. So it's like that, you know, like kind of figuring out what the trend is and how to ride that or be prepared for it when it does come back. Like that's the hardest thing, is like figuring out like, why is it that that's not working anymore? And that one was like it's so hard too, because the world is so, and then also different platforms and their different algorithms and just people in general and how fickle people are. It's like, it's hard to like figure out like, the thing that I was doing right like a second ago is no longer working anymore.
Do you have a core audience for YouTube that keeps you going kind of no matter what? Like, I mean,
for
all
sure.
that talk of like the 1,000 true fans thing.
Yep. That's so true.
So, so sweet. So you've got those people for YouTube.
So they come out mostly in my because now I do Friday streaming games, because I wasn't able to play video games, right? Because I was so busy, like all the things I'm telling you about, like, doing this, do that. So I'm like, how can I like integrate it so I can play games again, but then still have it do? I was like, I can stream it, and I'll do it as like a hangout. So like on Fridays I'll do a hangout, and those are like my core people. Actually, it's very funny because sometimes during those streams I'll like get donations and things like that, and those will actually be like the most successful video like that week, because because me interacting with people and them getting to know me, versus it kind of like, you know, when I'm doing my videos, like there is interaction in it, but it's just like, you know, a comment or something like that. But it's, you know, real time, you know, I think it's a lot more effective. But doing that, I think, and seeing like that comment section is like the people who I can recognize who are coming back week after week. And then because I try to make sure that the culture of my channel is that everyone is to be included. Like sometimes you'll have very toxic comments, and there's a difference between letting it just kind of happen versus actively attacking it. So if you see something is going on that's bad, I attack that. I'm like, hey, we don't, do that here. Like, you can see how everybody else is interacting. Like, let's all be like cool. And that culture just sort of, festers where I don't even have to do that sometimes anymore. The other people in the comment section do that, and then people will say that like, oh, I'm so happy to like be here. You have such like a nice, and I'm like, oh yeah, you have to work at that. Like I work on making sure that community is built. And I'm very intentional about that sort of a thing. So yeah, building up those 1,000, people is totally like everyone should be doing that, like that core, because I think everyone's so busy trying to get everybody, but the thing is that not everyone's going to vibe with your stuff, and they shouldn't really. We are all very unique people. We shouldn't have to vibe with every little thing. Even when people say, should I read your book, I'm like, well, only if you like this and that. Like I don't think you should read it unless you are like, I don't ever try to push my book to someone until I hear like a key word, like, oh, I'm really into airships. Oh, hey, by the way, I'm really into like dark fantasy. Oh, by the way, I want a Percy Jackson that's like takes place in Africa. Oh, by the way, like that's a similar thing that advice you get at conventions. Like if you ever do conventions, like someone walks by your booth and they're wearing like a Harry Potter shirt or something like that, and you're like, oh, hey, I have something that's very similar to, it's about that versus just like everybody come to me, kind of a thing. It's like, no, like the people who I know who, would interact with me. Like, let's have joy with this together.
Totally. I have found that that's actually also useful for the way I write my books now. I have stopped trying, like, and I was never trying to write to market, but my first couple books, I was just like, I was trying to write my books, but worried about the whole time
what everything else.
What else would people think, and I have just completely given up on that. And I'm like, the book I'm working on right now is just like, I love this book. It tickles me. Like every time I write it, I've given a bunch of my characters ADHD, which I have. I've like done a bunch of stuff that just like, these characters are all characters I connect with. I love my antagonist. I love my protagonist. I love this book. And I'm like, I do not care. I'm like, I might publish this and no one is going to like it, but I liked writing it so much, it doesn't matter.
Right. Yeah.
And then the hope is that having written that book, I will find more of the 1,000 people. I think I found like 10 of the 1,000 people so far.
Yeah. No, I feel like the same way, right? Like I was like, oh, there's like 10 people who I know for sure who like follow everything.
But I will like find more of those people because I'll have written a book that was really just like my book. This is the book.
And have you noticed that like over time you've seen more and more, like very slowly, but you've seen more and more people who are like, oh, I'm attached to this person. I'm attached to this person. But it's a slow moving. Like for me, I see it little by little happening.
It is a funny thing. It's also kind of how I switched my interactions on Twitter. Like when I first got onto Twitter, I was like doing it for business. Terrible idea. Like I was like, I'm making my author platform. Not that like, I mean, there are people who do that and can do it well or whatever. But it's not. Twitter only started being a thing that I didn't hate when I just gave up and was like, I'm just going to be myself on Twitter and I'm going to I'm going to tweet about social justice, and if people have a problem with that, they can just go somewhere else. Like there's no one forcing them to follow my Twitter feed. And since then it's turned delightful. I've like curated my feed so that it's a lot of a huge amount of civil rights issues and also books and like a nice balance and some cat videos like thrown in there, and it works for me. I have great interactions with people, and I feel like I've got a bit of a community there. And then now anytime that something book related is happening that's cool, people share it for me. I'm just like, hey guys, look at this cool thing, and people are like, yeah, look at Virginia's cool thing, and I'm like, that's awesome. Those people have way more followers than I do, and look, but it's not like, but that's not.
Oh my god, it happened too with a retweet. Like something I was like, I had no pre-orders on something, and then like one person retweeted, like, well, I don't even know who that person. And I'm like, what? Where did these 50 pre-orders come from? And just like that, like what? There you go.
And that is awesome. And it's not like, if you set out with that goal, like I'm going to befriend these people so that they will spread my word, that doesn't work.
It doesn't work. It doesn't.
That from a million miles away. But if you just are like, no, I'm just going to be here and be me, and then when something happens, I talk about it, and people are like, oh yeah, we'll share that cool thing. And that's how QuaranCon happened. Like I was just sitting on Twitter being bummed about all the conventions I was going to be going to getting canceled, and seeing all my friends being bummed about the conventions that they were going to do getting canceled, and I was like, I don't know, guys, what do you think? What if I just like made an online convention? Would y'all come? And like 220 people filled out a little form that I made being like, yeah, I'd come. And 6 weeks later, a convention happened. But, like you can't make it happen. It just you have to just be
It's
there.
much easier if it's organic, for sure.
Yeah. Anyway.
And for your health too.
Yes.
Much easier if it's organic.
The other piece to that. Yeah. So just like, I feel like approaching a creative community that way really works out better than anything else. And so it's really cool to hear that that's the whole vibe of your YouTube channel. You're just like, it's an actual community, people engaging and hanging out. Okay. And then, so between those two things, we're talking a little bit about like challenges in YouTube, challenges in writing. Do you have a preference for one over the other? Or do you feel like you love them both equally or whatever? Like, how do you feel about it?
I think writing is first. And the thing with me is I feel I'm a jack of all trades kind of a person, and I'm actually afraid of specialization because I'm afraid of putting my eggs in one basket, even though I probably will be more successful if I did do that. But I feel like doing moderately well in several things versus doing super well in one thing feels more safe to me. But I have had that thought like over the past year. I'm like, man, I should really focus on like one of these things. But then like nothing has happened yet where I need to make that decision. So I'm like, oh, it's okay. I'll just do moderately well at everything at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, that seems legit. With two giant corporations like YouTube and Amazon being kind of like the keepers of these two trades, it feels like either one of those companies could just decide to do something insane tomorrow. And if they did, it's really sweet that you have the other one to fall back.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, I'll just go there.
It's like, oh God, YouTube collapsed. Oh, good thing I got books. I don't think those things are likely to happen, but it's kind of nice that was my whole idea, like going wide initially, was I was just like, I don't want Amazon to be my only source of income. That seems like a terrible idea.
Scary. Yeah. But if you really think about it, it's just ebooks that you're being exclusive with, not everything, right?
Exactly. So. Yeah. And lately, like I've been selling a lot more print books wide, which has been really nice. So hardcovers, man, people like hardcovers. I don't sell nearly as many paperbacks as I do hardcovers.
I've noticed that too.
Yeah. Which is fun because hardcovers are delightful. I like owning them. I like holding them.
I like hardcovers a lot. It's funny because Murphy actually just had a thing and she said she preferred paperbacks. I think she said it because of the way that they're easier, they're more malleable or whatever is what she was saying. And she's like, for traveling, she likes it better. But I was like, what? I thought everyone loves hardbacks.
I mean, for traveling, I use this bad boy, right?
Yeah, just use a Kindle.
No, I want 700 books in one instead of like, I don't care about fitting 6 books in my backpack. I want 600. But if I'm gonna,
and that looks like a page. Is that the Paperwhite, by the way, that you have?
It is, yeah, the Paperwhite.
It's a page. It literally you could be outside in the sun and it looks like a page.
I know, I love it.
It just doesn't smell like a book. Okay,
I know it does not.
Like whatever.
Which, hey, like I get it. I get people's strong preferences. I also can't afford my reading habit with real books. Like, there are literally 700 books on this. And that would have cost me way more than I make
the paper cost, the printing cost,
I do still buy hardcovers occasionally because I love them, and I it's like a special treat to myself sometimes. But I can't do that otherwise. But anyway, so people love hardcovers, and that's awesome. And thank you, people, for loving hardcovers.
I know, and audiobooks too. Audiobooks are coming up. Apparently, I saw an article from Findaway that they're saying that the younger generation, Z, I think it's Z, and then Alpha, because I didn't even know that there's a name for the next one, Alpha.
Sure.
That's what they're calling Generation Alpha because they have to start back to the start of the alphabet again.
That's true. But got all the way there, man.
Alpha, I think that's what we'll call them. We'll call them Alpha. But apparently they are taking more to audiobooks, which is funny because that used to be the way stories were told back in the day, right? Like it's fireside, you would just hear a storyteller tell it. So we're kind of coming full circle with like the human history about like, we have the printing press in the middle there, and now we're going back to like oral stories.
Yeah. It's cool. I like it. Yeah. I enjoy some audiobooks a lot, but it turns out I'm weirdly picky.
Yeah, no, a lot of people are. A lot of audiobook people are in particular.
And I don't think it's rational. Like I feel like I have like very weird preferences for audiobooks. And so
like that person pauses after their second word too often.
Yeah, like seriously, it's like that's stupidly nitpicky. And it's also it's not worth spending that much time on, but I think it's very much about like I do my own narration and I have an acting background, and I also love to read aloud, and I read aloud all the time to my kid, and I just feel like anytime someone just uses different inflections than I would, I'm like, oh, this is awful. Just like, what? That is not what goes on inside my head. Is not a standard of quality to measure anyone to. That's ridiculous. I recognize that, and yet I can't get my brain to avoid it. So I don't know what to do. Neil Gaiman, I could listen to that man read every book he's ever written and every other book ever written.
He's very neutral. He doesn't do a lot of extra on his. Sometimes people go like a little bit overboard, or they're too robotic. He's very good at just being natural inflection and everything.
It's really, I don't know.
Very calming.
It is. I think it's that. I think for him, I'm willing to just like, he can say whatever he wants. And I'm just like, your voice is so nice to my ears that I don't care. And so all the little things that might bother me elsewhere, I'm like, doesn't matter. It's Neil. It's fine.
And it's like, he knows, like, he's like, you're going to take your time to listen to my story. I'm not going to rush through it. Like, you know, it sounds like he's so confident. Like, okay, I know you're about to take me somewhere. So like, go ahead and take me.
And that's it too, it is very much a storyteller's voice. It is like, we're going on a journey together, friend. So sit back, let me tell you. And I love it. Anyway. So yeah, audiobooks. I've just done my first audiobook for the first book in this series, and no one is buying it. But because I haven't. Oh,
that's hard. That's another one that is very much a backlist, like just have it there versus it being like it's gonna shoot off, you know.
So hopefully, if any, like when any of my other books gain more traction, I mean, yeah,
Chirp deal.
I have it on Chirp, and I've
Apply.
been
Okay, good. Do that. It's so good.
Every month, I have a calendar reminder. submit. I actually think I have the audiobook for By Sea and Sky, because
via Chirp.
Because I got it for 99 cents, and I was like, yoink. And I also have the ebook, but I'm like, I could switch it up. I haven't listened.
We need more competitors to some of those giants that are out there.
I know, that's why I love Chirp. I don't actually know. They're probably owned by Amazon for all I know, but like.
Well, they're actually trying to partner. Well, they're semi-partner with Findaway right now. Yeah. So it's BookBub's audiobook platform. Yeah. So separate from, because BookBub just does the deal stuff, but they actually now are trying to get in the audio game.
Yeah, and like I love actually get all my audiobooks through Chirp because
me too. Like I get like any of my purchased ones, I do Libby. Libby is a great app. If anyone doesn't know about Libby and they want to have free, because everybody always asks me like, where can I get this for free? Because everybody's always trying to like download like the illegal copy. Like, guys, your local library is now on your phone. Please, like if anyone ever tells me that, or if like someone doesn't like that something's wide, I'm like, well, you know, you don't have to. It's free, you know. Just and we still get paid as authors if you do it through the library, you know.
Yeah, exactly. Like, come on, Overdrive.
Yes.
No, I do. Like Libby's amazing. And I've used it for a few audiobooks and Chirp, but Chirp is so fabulous. I'm listening to Raybearer right now and loving it.
That one's getting really great reviews right now. Yeah, that's on my TBR right now.
It's cool. It's really cool. It's been like 2 weeks since I last listened to it because I've been in a writing tunnel.
Hey, that happens sometimes.
But I was really enjoying it, and I'm looking forward to going back to it. I just am like, I need time. But anyway, audiobooks, yay. So is there an audiobook coming out of Ruin and Silk also? Like,
yes, actually, it's being edited right. Like literally, I just sent the files off to the because again, so busy. Usually, I would edit it myself, but I had his other clients' work and this vlog channel, and I was like, oh, you know what? Hey, the guy who narrated it, he also does editing too. I was like, hey, can you help me out on this? Can you actually edit this? Like, I actually just sent him the files like last night.
Gotcha. Cool. So great. So then it's coming out. Well, I guess in.
Well, who knows? Because it takes so long to get approved by that big guy. But everyone else, it happens like within like 3 days.
That's right. Like Findaway, it'll be like out in a week, and the other one will be like
takes us a few months sometimes.
Yeah. But Blade's Edge was out like everywhere in audio except the big one. For like 6 weeks. I was just like, what are you guys doing? Anyway. So we are going to open stuff up to audience questions. I see we definitely have Lois. Hey Lois. Thanks.
Hi Lois.
Someone whose username is meh.
Meh. Hey, you get the awesomest names on. Is this streaming on YouTube or Twitch?
It's just YouTube. It's and so I don't know who Meme is, but welcome. Like Meh, like the meh.
Yeah.
That one. Yeah. But Misty306 is the username, but Lois is the person behind it, and Lois is like amazing, super fan for QuaranCon. But she's also a reviewer for Fantasy Faction, and is that right? Fantasy Faction or Fantasy Hive?
Oh, Fantasy Hive. They did. I think Fantasy Hive is the one who did the Kishi in the self-publishing book off blog off. Whatever it's called. Yeah. I only know it by its acronym, but not like what it actually comes out as.
Until like I'd spent a bunch of time in there, I was like, it's SPFBO, right? And there was like, no, it's Spiffbo. I'm like, that's weird. Why would we say it that way? But we said apparently the thing. So after a year of all that, I caved. It's Spiffbo. But feel free. I'm with you if you want to just call it SPFBO. That's cool. Okay. So yeah, but I feel like I should mention that both By Sea and Sky or the Kishi was definitely a semifinalist. Was By Sea and Sky also a semifinalist?
No, I don't believe it was. No, because that was done by Kitty, and she's the one who's by herself. She doesn't do.
Oh, right. So she has
panelists.
Yeah. Right.
Which is fine because I was saying if it's subjective, it's harder to get through on a subjective one, versus one that's like, well, not that it's objective if it's a panelist, but it's you get more varied opinions on the same product.
It's true. And Kitty, I think I remember her review of it. She enjoyed it.
No, she liked it.
It was just like, but she had like,
yeah, she had other ones she preferred. Yeah.
And that's what's so hard about Spiffbo, period. Right. Even when you're on the groups that have like,
right, exactly
people reading it, it's just like total lottery who else's book you're in there with and what hits with the readers that are reading it. And it's just like, yeah. But I remember that the Kishi was a semifinalist the year that Blade's Edge was a finalist. And I remember I actually remember rooting for the Kishi just because I saw the cover and I read the first chapter and I was like, this is so cool. And then
everyone loves that first chapter. Such a good setup.
And then it didn't make it. And that's too bad, but that's just like,
isn't that the one that Sword of Kagan one? Like, I'm fine not winning to Sword.
I know.
Completely fine.
That was the year where I was like, oh my gosh, I'm glad I'm not in Kitty G's group because I'd already read Sword of Kagan in March of that year, like way before the contest. And I was just like, this is amazing. This is one of the best fantasy books, period, that I've read. Mm-hmm. And so as soon as it was entered, I was like, that's winning. There's no way that's not winning. So I was like, so if I can just like come in somewhere behind that, I'll be stoked, right? And so the fact that Blade's Edge made finalists, I was like, what? Okay, Sword of Kagan's still gonna win, but this is so cool. I'm a finalist, yay! And Miracle hates it when we say that to her, but she's we're like, I'm sorry, you were always gonna win. But I've now read all of the finalists from that year, and
2019, yeah.
And they were all so good. I legit enjoyed every single one of them. So like, I feel like, and my goal was originally, I was like, I'm going to read all the semifinalists too.
That's hard. That's hard.
I tried. A lot of them are still on my Kindle. And I hope to get to them at some point, but man, that was a lot. It's a lot of good books. It's too many good books.
Even with Kitty, how many she has to read this on her own? I'm like, that is so much reading.
It is a lot of reading. Yeah. And that's the thing.
200 books a year or some craziness like that.
She does. Yeah. It's impressive. So there's also we have a Tony Johnson who has just said hello. Hello, Tony.
Hello, Tony.
Anyway, audience members, there's a 20-second lag, but please, if you have questions for Antoine, please ask them now. And otherwise we're gonna move into the silly wrap-up questions, but we'll give you 20 seconds to think of something if you have questions, and then we will continue to move on. Am I actually frozen? Oh no, I just paused it. Okay. I wonder. I hope that didn't pause my chat. I seem to have accidentally paused my feed. Would that have paused the live chat?
No, usually the live chat keeps going on.
Okay. Good.
Usually.
Tony says, I definitely have to read Kishi because I remember Bald Book Geek's glowing YouTube review of it.
Oh yeah, Bald Book Geek. Yeah, he's crazy fan. Like, I did not expect that from anyone really, but he's like super like my cheerleader sometimes. I'm like, wow, really?
Sweet. That's awesome. Well, that's apparently why Tony's excited for it. And I'm waiting. I assume that there will be some more questions coming up, or actual, questions. In the meantime, though, I am just going to ask you the 9th question, which is, of course, the most important question of the entire interview, which is, if you could, wait, did I switch that? No, I'm just down on the wrong. Sorry. reading the wrong note. It's like, this is not the question I wrote. If you were a bender, what element would you be? Would you bend?
You should probably know from the endings of my videos, which, oh my God, I'm so, okay, well, I'll explain why I did a, oh my God, right there. But
have I watched any of your videos all the way to the end though? Because like, I tried to watch like 20
it's my tag at the end. I'll explain it right now. So my tag at the end is be water, my friends. I will be a water bender, and I'm so, it hurts my soul every time some kid on YouTube goes like, what is that? Is that a thing? Why do you always say be water, my friends? What is that? I'm like, oh my God, guys, how do you know not the late great Bruce Lee? Sorry, I'm like my diary here. But yeah, water for sure. And that's mostly based on its fluidity. And the idea of change, and how it, again, just like with Bruce Lee, you know, like water can take any shape, you know, it can you don't, it just fit in the cup, it becomes the cup, you know. It is a life philosophy. Like even the Iroh from Avatar, the way he figured out lightning redirection, it was through water, and just the idea of having an open mind to like the change of the world, or just the adaptation. And me, again, saying that I'm the jack of all trades of things, like I'm very malleable in that way. Yeah. The way that water is.
Awesome. I like that. That is a solid answer. And Tony has a question. He says, if you could only read one fantasy book for the rest of your life, what would it be?
Okay, series, or are we talking about singular book here?
He said book. The word was book. And it'll be 20 seconds before he can correct that. So.
Then it would have to be The Giver then. But I don't know if I could read, because I feel like I wouldn't be able to reread it over and over and over again. But it's one that I would pick up like once a year, just to be like, dang, that's such a good message, and such a good, because it's very different from other, what people call dystopian kind of, because not a dystopian, it's a utopian book. It's like the idea of what happens if we have a utopia, because we don't usually get that narrative, right? About what does the world look like when it's, you know, deemed perfect. It's kind of sterile. It kind of lacks a little bit of spice, you know, right? And it always hit me very hard. That book, it was the first book that I was like required to read in school that I actually enjoyed. Well, maybe that or The Hatchet. I can't remember which one came first, The Hatchet or The Giver. But yeah, that one really, really, really hits for me really well. If we're talking about fantasy, which that one's kind of fantasy, kind of literary, but it's
fantasy specifically.
So yeah, fantasy. Yeah, for fantasy, that'd be the one for that one.
Cool. Solid answer. Tony has not followed up with whether or not he would allow a series, so I think you're stuck with book. So The Giver it is. Okay. Well, if there are no other audience questions, folks, I'll check back right at the end. But the last question is always, like one of the most important questions. What's next? What is the next thing that's coming out? I mean, yeah.
So it would be the TJ Young in the Odisha series, the Gatekeeper Staff, which is my first YA book, which I was saying earlier is like has been really speaking to me. It's contemporary as well. I suppose it'd be called urban fantasy, but I don't know if it doesn't have the same exact tropes as most urban fantasy. It's more whatever you would call Percy Jackson. Like, I guess when people call that urban fantasy,
contemporary fantasy.
Contemporary fantasy. But that one is much in the vein. I say that it sits between the realm of Percy Jackson and American Gods, in the sense that it's about like it's more of a teen story than it is like a middle grade. But it's not adult like American Gods gets into. But instead of it being, about the Olympians or like the old Norse gods, or there's a lot of gods in American Gods. This one's about the Orishas of West Africa, which is where my last name comes from. So my last name Bandele means born away from home in the like kind of the Americanized version, but the original term is Bamidele, which means follow me home. Cool. So I thought it was very nice that my last name like kind of like does what my stories are doing. So that one comes out on Juneteenth of this year. Nice. And it's something I'm, like I was saying before, like the early reviewers are loving it, especially the people who follow the Orishas, because it's still a living practice today. Are really enjoying, because I was actually most afraid for them, because I was like, oh no, like this is definitely a fantasy work, guys. I'm not like depicting this as like, reality or anything, but they still like are vibing with it, which is really cool. And the character stuff too. Even I had a Donna Black reader, like just two nights ago, like I woke up from a nap and he gave me this huge like email about how relatable it was despite him having different life experiences. I was like, wow, if that can touch someone who doesn't have those same life experiences that like the main character does, then I'm like, this must be working like pretty well. If it's like it's working for people who I directly was writing for, and then people who, you know, I necessarily weren't writing for. Like that means a lot to me. And this one, like I was saying before, just it clicks for me so well. So I'm like really looking forward to like that next horizon for me.
Nice. That is awesome. So everyone should also check that out. I should go grab a link for that. Is the pre-order up?
Yes, pre-orders up for both the hardback and ebook.
Nice. And at the end of this, I need to pick your brain about the print pre-order thing.
Ingram Spark, that's the answer.
What? Yeah, no,
Spark.
that is, I have it. I have
more specific questions. I got you.
Really specific question that no one else is going to be interested in. That's why I'm not going to ask you right now. But that sounds super exciting. And also, don't forget, people, that Of Ruin and Silk comes out tomorrow.
And by Sea and Sky, it's free right now on Amazon.
That's right. Oh yes, you mentioned. Yeah. So that means you can get you get both those books for $4.99 because one of them is
because $4.99 is the over. Yep. So the price of one book for two.
It's two. It's a twofer.
So kill 2 rocks with 1 stone. Bringing that back.
Yes. Knock giant eagles out of the sky. Okay. So everybody go forth, buy all the books, buy them in every format also. And Antoine, are you joining us for QuaranCon, or did you submit? Are you interested? I don't even know. I have not looked at like the panelist applications.
Oh, submit? Wait, I didn't know I was supposed to submit something.
You weren't necessarily. I
was not aware.
So I don't know, guys, since Antoine doesn't know. I don't know if you'll see Antoine during QuaranCon, but you might, because we'll talk about that when we're done. But certainly, everyone, I will see you all for QuaranCon 2021, April 8th through 12th. And we don't know what we're showing you yet because we just got a ton of applications from people, and we're going to start sifting through them and picking people out. So please join us for that. I don't think I'm doing any more interviews between now and then, except I did say to RJ Barker that I was going to interview him again after he won the award for the British Fantasy Society best fantasy novel. Yeah. So maybe RJ, if he and I both have time. Otherwise, you won't see me till April. And anyway, thanks so much, Antoine, for being here. This was delightful. I appreciate your time. And everyone, go buy his books and subscribe to his YouTube channel and stuff. Subscribe to our YouTube channel while you're at it, because then you won't miss anything. And we'll see you later.